What kind of miles per gallon can you expect with a plug-in hybrid? Well, I have a 2020 plug-in hybrid Kia Niro, and it has 26 miles of all-electric range. And around town, I may never ever use any gas, so the miles per gallon is 999 on the little meter inside the car. Now, if I'm traveling around a little bit further than 26 miles and the petrol engine kicks in, then I start to get a sense of what the engine is doing in terms of consuming fuel. But I really want to know what the miles per gallon is when the car is just running solely pretty much by the engine with a little bit of battery assist. So I'm going to be making a trip from Sacramento down to Pasadena on I-5, a very flat, nice road, and I will have exhausted all of the battery and just running on the engine for many, many, many miles to get a real good, accurate estimate of what that miles per gallon is with just the engine. The magic of the plug-in hybrid, or any hybrid, is that the engine shuts down at slow speeds and a stop. And sometimes when you're going downhill, that's where you really save a lot of fuel. So in those kind of driving environments, you may not get a super accurate estimate of what the engine is consuming in terms of fuel in miles per gallon until you do a test where the engine is just running and it's not shutting down because you're not going down a hill and you're not coming to a stop. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Oh, 10,000 miles on the odometer. Wow. On this trip down to Pasadena. So where are we at before we start going over the mountains? 52.5 miles per gallon. With that initial 26-mile all-EV, went from about Sacramento to Elk Grove. So far, we've traveled 294.6 miles in 5 hours, doing about 70 miles an hour. And we still have a tank of gas. And 261 miles left on the counter, but we're going to be going up over the mountains, and so that's going to take some extra juice, but going down we'll pick up some battery power. When we began the trip down to Southern California from our home, we had a full charge, 26 miles, 100% battery. And then as we drove south, I would periodically check the instrument cluster to see what the miles per gallon, how many miles we had traveled, and to get a sense of what was going on. So in this particular graph, you can see after 91 miles, obviously the battery was gone. We're working just on the fuel engine. We had a miles per gallon of 71.1. 215 miles into the trip, we had a miles per gallon of 54. And then near I-5, at Bakersfield, you start to go up over Tejon Pass, and that goes from essentially sea level up to 4,100 feet. So that little area where the miles per gallon drops to 49.3, I attribute to going up those grades. But of course, you go back down the grade into Southern California, and the engine would shut off going down some of those steep grades. And our final miles per gallon after 398 miles was 51.5 miles per gallon. Now, driving style can obviously impact your miles per gallon, and so I took some little screenshots on the instrument cluster of what my driving style was. And in general, I'm averaging, before we left, about 85% economy, 15% normal, and I'm not an aggressive driver. Coming back, did a recheck, and my economy driving had dropped to 80%, 18% normal, and 2% aggressive. I attribute the aggressive percentage to, having to really push on the gas pedal to get up some of the hills or to pass a vehicle on I-5. For the most part, I just used adaptive cruise control, set it to auto miles per hour. So sometimes, most of the time it was 70 miles per hour. Sometimes it would drop down to 65. And obviously you slow as you get close to a vehicle until you go around and pass it. My purpose for going to Pasadena area was to go to the Huntington Library to do some historical research. So for 2 days, I pretty much was at the Huntington Library looking over all kinds of different documents. In the evenings, we would go out to dinner. We went to Santa Monica one evening, down to downtown LA to see some clients. On another evening, we didn't do a whole lot of driving around except for those 2 evenings. The first evening we stayed at the hotel. The hotel was able to charge the car to 100% battery. The next evening we only got about 80% because it had like 18 miles range on it on Friday. And then the last evening we stayed, they didn't have a chance to charge it at all. So when we left the Pasadena area, there was no battery. So it was pure hybrid at that point in time. And that was kind of interesting. So we leave Pasadena on Saturday morning, no EV. We traveled 409 miles from the hotel to our home here in Granite Bay, a time of 6 hours and 46 minutes. We took 2, maybe 3 pit stops, just real quick. And that was 46.2 miles per gallon. I was kind of surprised that it was a little bit low. However, you know, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for the car to rest. It was just pretty much solid going. It was interesting that going down the very steep grade after you go over the Tejon Pass down into the Central Valley, you know, the engine did shut off and we picked up 3 miles of regenerative braking or coasting, whatever you want to call it. But still, that didn't help enough. We still had a very low miles per gallon. And I think part of that is just going 70 miles an hour. Overall, for the 903 mile trip down there and back, 18 hours and 39 minutes of drive time, the car says we had a miles per gallon of 51.2. So primarily freeway, a little bit of charge, a little bit of, you know, around town driving. And of course, you know, those 2 charges at the hotel. Now the gasoline consumption, I did my best to track the gallons I put in, and I measured 18.3 gallons over 903 miles. That comes out to 49.3 miles per gallon. So why is there a discrepancy between my gallons and mileage versus the car? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm off a half a gallon on the gas. I'm not sure. But overall, that also includes, you know, 70 miles essentially of all electric in that 49.3 miles per gallon, and another 5 to 10 from regeneration going down hills. What this tells me is that your best miles per gallon with a hybrid is around town. And you are going to get a lower miles per gallon when you're on the freeway, which in this sense, you know, kind of makes sense. It's a very small engine. I think it's 1.6 liters. And there were times on I-5 when the engine would shut off because the engine not only is driving the wheels, but it is also charging the battery in many instances. So it would shut down, but obviously not enough. The engine was really working the whole time. But, you know, okay, let's split the difference and call it 50 miles to the gallon. I'm happy. And that 18 hours in that seat, I was really, really comfortable. With that adaptive cruise control, you know, it does a little bit of lane keep assist, the stress, virtually none. So yeah, hey, next to having an all EV car, which that will be hopefully the next car when I can afford it, you know, a hybrid, even if you don't have the battery to get you 26 miles, you should be getting, you know, worst case scenario on the freeway, you know, 50 miles to the gallon, and that is substantial with today's gas prices. So hopefully that helps you get a better sense of how these plug-in hybrids work and the money you can save on gas.